Welcome, Crater fans. This is a talk from Crater Remote Conf Mobile Edition. This talk focuses on building mobile apps using JavaScript. You can find out more information about upcoming Crater Remote Confs at conf.crater.io. Enjoy the talk. All right, welcome back to the second session of this Thursday edition of Crater Conf Mobile. And our next speaker is going to talk about Cordova Challanges, which is apropos because he has an app called Parlay. He is the CTO. I think him and his sister are running that application. So without further ado, Loren, take it away.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, my name is Loren, and this is day 2 of Crater Mobile Conf and session number 2, Cordova Challanges. I have spent the past couple of years working on a social mobile app for making social wagers with your friends. And it is a Meteor Cordova app. And I've run into a number of different challenges, mainly in the lines of performance. And I've overcome some of them, and some of them I'm still working on. So I'm here to tell you about what those are and why you might want to choose doing a Cordova app or a native app or a React Native app. So the environment you are in Cordova is you have a small native app shell that launches a web view, and that web view takes up the entire screen of the phone. And your JavaScript is running in the main thread, and that means like whatever you do in JavaScript land, it blocks the user interface. So like the screen pixels cannot update while your JavaScript is running, unless you're doing something like running JavaScript in a worker. I think the mobile browsers that are current support web workers, but maybe your framework doesn't support web workers. For instance, in Meteor land, if you're using like Reactor Blaze and Mini Mongo, that's all in the main thread. And it would be substantial work to like try to take out Mini Mongo and put it in a worker or parts of Blaze. You definitely couldn't do all of Blaze because it needs to interact with the DOM. One cool thing is Angular. Angular number 2 is sort of built in a modular way that allows for a large bulk of the computation to be done in a worker. So that'll be exciting to see how much performance benefit they get from that. And so you're in JavaScript like, and you get to access native functionality through regular JavaScript functions. And a quick example of that is the geolocation plugin. We're in JavaScript in your browser, and you create 2 different functions: an on-success callback and an on-error callback, and you call navigator.geolocation.get current position in JavaScript, and you get these callbacks in JavaScript. But the implementation of that function does a bridge to call native code, depending on whether you're on Android or iOS. It does whatever those Swift Objective-C or Java API is, and then it gets the result back, and then passes it back over the bridge to your JavaScript browser land and calls your JavaScript on success on error. So that's how you get native functionality inside Cordova. Another interesting thing is you can update your app without going through the App Store, similar to how you can with React Native because it's using JavaScript, and Apple has said that it's okay to update your app directly if it's JavaScript, which is a nice exception. And there are different ways to get a new set of files, a JavaScript files and HTML and CSS into your Cordova app. The most straightforward way would be to like rebuild the entire app and then submit it to the App Store and have your users download it. But the cool thing is to do it directly, sort of inside of the live app. And if you do that in JavaScript, which is, if you're familiar with Meteor, the way that the Cordova pre 1.3 version of Meteor worked was in JavaScript land, it would download all the files and then replace them and then refresh. that wasn't a good user experience because as we were talking about before, anything that's happening in JavaScript, doing a special thing with it, is in the main thread. So while it was downloading those files, your app was frozen. You couldn't scroll, you couldn't interact. Click events wouldn't happen because they were busy. JavaScript was busy downloading files. And if you had a huge bundle with lots of files, it could be frozen for minutes. So after 1.3, they only downloaded the change files, not the entire HTML, CSS stuff bundle. And B, they do it in native code, so it doesn't have to block JavaScript in your browser. So those were some great improvements to the point where now you don't notice that the user doesn't notice that the files are being downloaded because it's done fully in the background. So another thing to think about besides the environment you're working in when you're looking at Cordova is how am I going to do the UI? So if you're coming from a web background, you might be using Bootstrap or something, and the UI elements are built for a website, for something that you're clicking, that you're hovering, that has a big screen. And when you're doing a mobile app, you probably want it to look like other mobile apps, and specifically to look like the components, the default components that come with native apps. So there are different frameworks that help you with this, whether it's just in general mobile friendly versus mimicking precisely the native UI with JavaScript and CSS and HTML. And I wrote a little part of the guide article on view layers, and one of the sections is the mobile section. And for Cordova, you can use any web front end view layer like React, Angular, or Blaze because it's just a website. But for a sort of component framework for these things that are going to look nice on mobile, the most advanced one is Ionic 2. There are also some others like Onsen UI, and I need to fix this formatting adder. For Ionic, let me just give you an example of what those components look like. So here we're on the Ionic version 2, which is based on Angular version 2. And here's an action sheet for iOS. And that looks exactly like a current iOS action sheet. And then for Android, it looked material designy and has a different style for the action sheet. They have components for lots of different things, buttons, lists. Let's look at inputs for like a form. These are sort of normal looking Android inputs, and these are normal iOS, like inside of a list of inputs. And you could have floating labels, which was more of an Android thing, but they also have an iOS version. So like this takes JavaScript or CSS animations to mimic what happens in the native UI elements. And as you can see here, and this continues to be the case on the phones, is that it's a pretty smooth transition there. So you can pretty well mimic what the native UI elements look like, and so your user won't be like, this kind of looks like a website. What is this? I thought this was an app. Yeah, and there's another thing you can do in Cordova, which is there's a plugin called Ace made by Microsoft, where you can put native elements inside of your app. So here's an example of the HTML, your website only being part of the app in the native, like maybe you have a native header and a native menu or something. Here you have like a native button on top of a HTML page. And here you have a full screen. Maybe you're like, this is like a Snapchat thing, and you can swipe to this screen, and that one's native, and the main screen is native. But if you swipe left, you get to an HTML screen. And you can do for Android, you have widgets. iOS, you don't have those. So that's another cool thing, and you get the sort of interactivity for widgets that are native and have some interaction animation design that happens smoothly like you would if you're doing a normal native app. So that's UI libraries, component libraries, and let's think about animations. So I guess one of the big concerns people have when thinking about Cordova versus native or hybrid versus native is will it interact nicely, smoothly, quickly? When you click a button, will you get an immediate response from the page, both of the button being clicked and also the display of whatever happens next? Maybe it's another page or something. And there are certain ways that you need to code your CSS and JavaScript animations in order to make them smooth, particularly on mobile. And one of the recommendations is to use to transform only CSS properties that only use the compositor. So there's three general sections of what the browser does in its rendering cycle, and the cheapest to do is composite. So if you're trying to swipe a menu open, and you do it by changing the left property on that div, then you're going to be doing, this is all three colors. So this is layout, paint, and composite. You're going to be doing all those three. And that takes a lot of effort for the browser. And on desktop, that might be smooth. But on phones which have smaller or less capable processors, that might be jittery. And that's part of the native look and feel that you want to get right is when you drag things, you don't want them to skitter. You want them to flow exactly along with your finger at 60 FPS. So we're looking for properties to animate or to transition that only use the dark green. So instead of left, you would use something like transform translate. So let's look at like translate X. So transform, you can see over here, only uses the green. Transform only uses green in blink. And let's also look at opacity, is also only using green. So those transitions are going to appear smooth on a resource constrained device like your mobile phone. Let's look at some. Well, I guess let's talk about data loading. So in native apps, you often are storing some data on the phone locally, persistently, so that if you lose connection or you like restart the app and start it again and you don't have internet connection, the app can still display some data. It won't be the most up-to-date data, but it will still be able to display the page. And that's something that's just uniform across like mobile app development frameworks, and it might not be part of your web framework that you're using, because it's not that common in websites to store data in local storage or IndexedDB or Web SQL. And so, for instance, with Meteor, there's a package called GroundDB for saving your data offline, and you can use that to load the page with that saved offline data while you're offline. But people have had some trouble using it, and it wasn't a standard thing that came with the framework, with the Meteor platform. And there's even if you did use it, there's a problem where the server sort of has the state of each client, and when you disconnect from the server, even if you fill your mini Mongo client collections on restart with the things you saved in local storage or IndexedDB, the server doesn't know that, and it's going to send you all of the data that you've subscribed to, and you can't like just not subscribe, because then you won't get updates. So in order to get updates, you need to subscribe, and if you're going to subscribe, the server is going to send you the data, and that's unnecessary load on the server, and that takes time on the client to receive. So if you do a subscription on load and you go around in the app for a while, after a few seconds, depending on how big your subscription is, the subscription data is going to start coming over the wire from the server. And while it's arriving, even if the data isn't different, even if the UI is not getting re-rendered, it's still receiving the data in the JavaScript main thread. So your scrolling is going to be jittery because the browser is going to be busy receiving the WebSocket data and putting it in Minimongo, or at least comparing it to what's in Minimongo. And that takes time, and that prevents the browser from re-rendering while you're scrolling. One thing that will probably help with this in the future is systems or outside of Meteorland, systems where the client knows what data it has and knows sort of the version numbers of that are associated with whether that data has been updated or not. So one of the architecture designs for how Apollo, the GraphQL client, is going to work is that the client's going to have more information than Minimongo does in the current live data system. And it's going to be able to say, hey, server, do you have any new versions of these data or these version numbers of the data? And the server won't need to be sending the entire data back to the client. So that's going to help with data loading and having that be performant on the client and not freezing up the UI. So I guess another thing with data loading is when you're thinking about having an app that doesn't have any delays with user interaction, one of those is commonly you might be switching pages and you'll need data that you didn't have from the previous page to display the next page. And typically what you do is you'll subscribe to new data as soon as that route change happens, and you'll show a loading indicator, and then wait for the data to arrive, and then once it arrives, then you render the next screen. But that takes time where the user is just looking at a loading indicator, and it'd be better if you had all the data to begin with. So as soon as you change a route, you already have the data, and you just start rendering it. And so there's the only delay that the user sees is not any network traffic round trip to the server, which would take a substantial amount of time, but the only pause that happens is the pause where the browser is using JavaScript to render client-side templates with the data that you already have. And that can be very short. That can be 10 milliseconds. Although sometimes if it's a huge template, it can be on the order of seconds. That's just something that you have to tune in your app depending on what rendering view layer you use and the speed of that, and then depending on how complicated the templates are and the helpers or functions that are used to fetch, look up the data in Minimongo or Redux or whatever you're using to get it to format it correctly for display on the screen. So my app uses Blaze, and there are certain parts of Blaze that are generally slower than, say, React or Angular 2 in how it determines what updates to do, or in how it constructs the DOM together to put on the screen. And but there are also some things, some work that happens during rendering that is going to happen regardless of what view layer you use to do your template rendering. And so, for instance, if you're doing React and Meteor, you're still spending time doing Minimongo collection finds, and that takes some time too. So you're going to have performance problems, or you're going to have some delays, no matter which front end you use, just depending on how big your templates are and how complicated the functions that provide them data are. So let's look at Parlay and see, Parlay is the name of the app. See which things are fast, which things are slow, why the things are fast are fast, why the things are slow are slow. And we're going to look at this is the video from my device. And so I can't like click and interact here. So I'm just going to be tapping on my phone and we can see what happens on the screen. There's a little bit of delay, but I'll tell you sometimes when I'm tapping, and we can see approximately how big the delays are. So some things that are really smooth are things where you don't need to render anything new. So I'm tapping on the My Parlays sort of list filter header, and as soon as you, whoops. Sorry about that. Let's see how responsive this is. Okay, so this recording, let me try restarting this because it has a little bit of a lag. And let's take off. Well, no, I can't do that. Ah. So in case you didn't know, in QuickTime you can do a new movie recording, and if your phone is connected via cable, then you can see the screen. Okay, there we go. That's, I mean, the video of it on the screen isn't as fast as what we're doing, but you can still tell what's going on at least. So when I tap this right here, there's a JavaScript touch handler that starts a compositor only, like we were talking about at csstriggers.com, compositor only animation of that expanding wave. And as soon as so that happens in the touch handler, and that happens right away, and you can see it right away. Both that and also here, this is a rotation, which is a transform, which is a compositor only, and then this expansion of the menu or the filters is just a scale. So it's scaling from like 0 to like full one height. That's also really fast. Some things that take more time are when you need to render new things. So if I'm scrolling down, these are the list of my bets that I've done in the past. If I scroll down to the loading bar, I'm trying to scroll right now. It's not responding. So the loading spinner was going, and I was trying to scroll, but it wasn't scrolling because as soon as I saw the loading spinner, it started rendering the next items. So sometimes when you're doing an infinite scrolling list, and you see the spinner at the bottom, you might be doing a paginated subscription, like you can do custom in Meteor PubSub, or like Relay does for you in Facebook and GraphQL, React and GraphQL. And in this case, as soon as I loaded, during the load of the app, I'm subscribing to all of the data. So the data is on the client, so it's not actually requesting from the server. All it's doing during that time is rendering the list items. Like, you won't buy me a drink, and it takes Nicole over 6 seconds to notice it. And that's a somewhat substantial amount of time, and it is proportional to the complexity of each of these list items and how many you're rendering at a time. So I rendered something like 6 at a time. I actually do a test at the first load on a new device of how long it takes to render one of these. And if it takes a certain number of milliseconds, then I'll only render 4 at a time, or something like that. And on desktop, instead of having like 6 rendered, I'll have like 20 rendered because it's much faster. So we'll see let's scroll down again and see how long it takes for the next few to be rendered. 2, 3, 4. It's like 4 seconds before the data showed up, and maybe 3 seconds before scrolling started working. Let's compare that to the desktop browser version of the app, where, let's scroll down on this page. And I got here at 1, 2, 3. Well, usually it's much faster. I think it might be that I'm taxing my computer with all of these screens and video going on. Let's try reloading. I think I loaded this a while ago. And I wonder if app is running. Yeah, it's running. All right, while we wait for that to refresh, let's look back at the phone screen. So because whenever you're scrolling down, the page is frozen for a certain amount of time, depending on how big the templates of the individual items are, you have to think about how much you're going to put in each item. And one consideration is these are expandable. So if you tap on it, it expands. And the response to a tap right now, at least on iOS, Android is often a little bit slower because their processors just aren't as good. There's a great post about this from Jeff Atwood on one of his discourse forums, and he talks about how Android phone manufacturers have just been adding more cores instead of making the individual cores function better, versus Apple started making their own processors, which actually function significantly faster. And that's important for a single core to have a lot of power, because you can't use multiple cores for a single JavaScript main thread web browser runtime. So often your apps will be slower. Cordova apps will be slower on Android, especially if they're doing a lot of client-side rendering, like you would in Angular or React, any of these modern single-page app frameworks. And the sort of the complexity of displaying this is, you might have, let's look at something with more stuff in it. The first one, you have some emoji here, and you have comments listed out, and you have this menu. All of these things in the expanded list item are actually rendered even in this state. So I'm not tapping and then like changing what HTML is rendered in the template on the page. This is all these like the comments down there and the emoji are already rendered. They're just hidden with CSS. And I did that because previously tapping had some delay in it. You tap and then it would JavaScript Blaze template would be rendering, and then it would show you the expanded one. Versus just doing a CSS change, which is the current version of the app, happens immediately. And it's a trade-off, because now, because it's more complicated, when you scroll down for the infinite scrolling, that's going to take longer. Versus if you had on tap then rendered the comments, etc., it would be cheaper to render the non-expanded regular list items, and it would have been faster to do the infinite scrolling. Let's see, other things that are quick are that the show more. These are pretty simple notification rows, so it doesn't take much to render those. Dismissing notifications is fast. It's just taking that simple list off of the DOM. Let's go back to the outline of the talk. We looked at data loading. We looked at some smooth ones and not smooth list items when they got expanded. We're scrolling. Let's look at the pages. Okay, so when you do a page transition, you're often rendering a whole lot of new stuff. And one thing you can do to prevent all that rendering from having is having the pages rendered already. So like when I do the page load of this app, I'm not only rendering this home screen, but also the new page, which is if you click the top right plus. Let's see if it reflects in the movie. Sorry about the performance, guys. I have pretty beefy MacBook Pro, but I haven't tried doing this many things with it. So that transition to the new page is pretty fast because the new page is already there. It's just hidden behind the main page with CSS. And so when you do the route change, all you need to do is hide the home screen with CSS and show this with like opacity or z-index or something like that, or display none. Well, not display none because then it's actually anyway. So another example of things that are quick are this. When you tap somewhere on the friend, it does a CSS animation to go in and out. Sorry, again, this is hard to see over here. That overlay, this choose an opponent overlay, is already rendered. It's just scaled to 0 and hidden. And whenever you tap the plus, it unhides it and then scales it to one size. And it's using a technique called flip by Paul from Google Chrome team, that dynamically from wherever you are on the page, it goes to a certain place. It's cool animation technique if you're going from arbitrary place to arbitrary place on the screen. That's called flip, FLIP. So that's quick. Let's see the other parts of this page. If I'm switching between types, it's also pretty smooth. Again, the video you're seeing over here might not be smooth because it's not getting all the frames from the phone. On the phone, it's smooth. You can download it in the App Store. It's on Android and iOS. And check this out. Those are also similarly just compositor-only transitions. Some weird things that you have to think about or consider when you're making a hybrid app is sometimes keyboards and inputs just don't work right. For instance, right now the cursor is below the writing gift input. You can see it blinking over here, versus it should be up here because that's what I just clicked on. So it's sort of something to do with the keyboard coming up, and the page getting scrolled up, so that this keeps in view. Sort of messes up where the thing is. When I start typing, it's in the correct place. But there are some bugs like that I have no idea how to fix. And there at least used to be, you had to do some custom keyboard handling. I think it might have been fixed given the fact that this is running on WK Web View right now, where like you had to change the size of the page, either the height of the page or the scroll top, in order to get the thing you just clicked on to be shown. So like if this keyboard is down, if I tap that, if that had stayed in the same place, it would be under the keyboard and you would go see it. At least outside of WK Web View, you'd have to like change the height of that main page, or change the scroll top manually and like calculate how far do I have to move this thing up, this whole page up, so that this is above this line right here. So there's some keyboard handling things that you might run into. Let's go. Okay, so that was an example of a page that was already rendered, the new page. Let's Nest Outdoor Cam. Yeah, I saw that. Let's see. Going to the new page and back to the home screen is fast. Let's go to a different page, like the Friends page, and we can see how long it takes for that to render. Well, that was instant because the video didn't catch up. Let's go back to the home screen, and I'll tell you, I guess, when it's happening. The menu's open. I'm tapping Friends right now, immediately okay, you didn't see it. Anyway, there's some time where the menu is closed, but the new page has not finished rendering yet because it might be, I think it's a long page. Yeah, it's got all my friends listed there. And it takes a while to get them all there. So the page is sort of just dark for a noticeable, maybe like 200 milliseconds or something, because the whole page has not yet been rendered, unlike the new page. All right, let's look at something else. Something that's not smooth. A good example of that is, so up here, there's 3 different tabs. This is your own list of parlays or bets, and here's your friends feed, and here's your public feed. And this is sort of a hybrid between the iOS tab views in the header and the Android swiping views. Swiping tabs, I think is what they're called. And so you should be able to swipe between these or just tap these. I'm going to start out by tapping the friend one right here, and the friend list is sort of translated over to the right of the page. And similar to when you're scrolling down in the infinite scroll, it takes a little bit for it to appear. But now we can swipe. I'm slowly swiping, and on my screen it's without jitter, and there's a little bit of delay when you let go of the screen, and it finishes the transition. So like right here, you can see on this screen, it waits for less than a second over here before going over and finishing the swipe to the friends feed. And that's something strange because when you're swiping over, it's just changing a translate Y or translate X in the touch handler. But as soon as you let go, all that happens is there's a touch end handler that looks at the current position and like your velocity and your direction, and then decides whether to go to the next or go back to the first. And once it decides to go to the next, then it just turns on the transform and sets it to translate. So that should happen pretty quickly. Let's look at what actually happens. So like when you have some things that slow down like that, where you don't think you're doing any new rendering, because we've already gone to the friends page once, so that we know that's all there, just to translate it over to the right of the screen. So there shouldn't be any new rendering happening, but it's still slow. In those cases, you have to do some analysis, some profiling to see what's going on. And we can do the profiling in local development, so it's not minified. We're on localhost, and we're going to switch to the friends feed. Let's do it first without profiling it, just to see, just to get all the stuff rendered on the page. And then we're going to start rendering using the timeline tab of Chrome DevTools. And it will show us sort of the insides of the rendering of the Blink render engine. I'm going to stop this recording in the hopes that my computer will speed up. There we go. And so now let's see, my swiping isn't working. Let me try reloading. Well, without the, sorry, if you hit Command R while you're on the timeline tab, it starts recording. I didn't want to record the page load. I just wanted to reload this to try to get swiping working. Let's see, can I swipe? No. Anyone in the comments know why I can't swipe? Oh, thank you for, yeah, someone in the comments did the arrow twist, flip your animations link. Let's try changing this. I'm pretty sure, like, if you are in mobile emulation mode, you should be able to have touch events. And this has worked for me in the past, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Whoops. So touching is working fine. And swiping isn't. Anyway, well, okay, there, that time it worked. All right, let's try recording this. It's not exactly happening the way I thought it would. So let's swipe over to the left side and stop the recording, and then look at what happened. There's no delay. There's no visual delay on the computer, but there's probably some JavaScript happening, and that JavaScript is what's getting magnified on the slower device. That's causing the pause between when you let go during a swipe and when it finishes the transition. All right, so this is the whole thing. Looks like our animation happened over here around 2-second mark. At some point here's the touch start event, and during this event, every frame, at least on mobile, and when touch is properly working, it's setting the translate Y, and then when you get to the touch end, let's minimize this a little bit. So this is the touch end event. So your finger just left the screen, and we're looking at what's happening, and we're trying to find the part of our code that gets called and is taking time to run. So the total time, if we click on the top of the flame chart, is 26 milliseconds and 15 milliseconds for these two. This is like a set timeout, which looks like Blaze. So we must have changed something that Blaze reacted to, and then over here, we did this, which I recognize from my code, but doesn't take very long. Let's actually try the other way. So clear this recording, and we're going to start the recording, and then we're going to swipe left to get to the friends feed, and stop and see whether it does anything differently, and how much JS is being run. Okay, so this looks like more JS than going from the friends to the profile, and here's the touch end, and this is the animation that it's talking about here is like a transform animation versus this animation, which was every frame in JS setting there's no transform on the div. There's just setting the translate Y to whatever the current thumb position is. So this is where the CSS sort of animation starts, and well, I guess it's not an animation property, but here's where the transition starts. And that's right after the touch end, which is good. The touch end takes 160 milliseconds, which is longer than it took before. So let's zoom in on that and see whether anything different is happening. Here, so here's the set tab, which we saw last time. Here it's calling something in friends.coffee. Yes, I write in CoffeeScript. I love it. And let's find the line number that it's talking about. For back in timeline, it says line number 99, so that's down here. And it looks like if we're currently on the this page, the friends page, when I have a set tab, which is what happens when you let your finger off, it's calling a method, and that method call, whoops. Let's minimize this again. So we can see this is a call. This is a method call. It's doing something on a collection, local collection update. So ideally, you wouldn't be doing this at the same time that you want the browser to be animating the page. So you might. So what I'm going to do to fix this is to do this local collection update, which is taking 80 milliseconds. So often when you're doing something with MiniMongo, it's going to take some time. I'm going to do this like on a set timeout, like 100 milliseconds or something, or more, depending on how long this thing takes. This thing takes 340, so I'm going to make it maybe a second, because this particular operation, this method that I was calling, doesn't need to happen right away. So what else is happening? There's a set immediate, so like something in Blaze is triggering based on changes. I think it's related to the method. So the method made some minimongo changes, and then that invalidates some helpers. I think it's invalidating the helpers of the side menu that I can't swipe open right now. And what else is happening? We have a WebSocket on message. So whenever you send a method, the server comes back with a message that says, "Oh, this succeeded," or "No, it didn't." And if it, in either case, you have to receive the message in JavaScript, and then this is handling it. It's doing tracker recompute. So there were some data that triggered Blaze doing some re-rendering. And that happens a good amount. That's 400 plus. That's like almost a second right there. So it makes sense that that's going to take even longer on mobile. So we'll try to not do this method call, and then we won't get this WebSocket message, and then we won't trigger all of that. And even if when we do this, like if we set the timeout for a second and then do it later on, we still don't want all of this reactive recomputations to happen, because I don't think there's anything in the UI that actually needs to change based on that particular method that got called on the touch end. So that's an example of the sort of profiling you need to do in order to make sure your mobile app has performant UI, is responsive. And whenever you're looking at the times here in JavaScript, like 268 milliseconds, it's always going to be longer, sometimes twice or more the amount of time on your phone. All right, we talked about the hiding versus rendering. We talked about the keyboard. Oh, also, when you're thinking about, so I was saying that I rendered both the slash new page when you click the plus on the top right, and also the main page at the same time. If you render too much in the DOM at once, your memory, your RAM on your device goes up a lot. So like if I render all of the pages in the app and just hide all but one of them, so there's like, I don't know, 80 different routes or something with different pages, and if I render them all at the same time, then that's going to be a huge DOM, even though it's not much to display. Even when your CSS hiding most of it, it's still all there in the DOM, and that takes a lot of RAM. And if you do too much RAM on a computer and a website, you're just going to start swapping, and it's going to start slowing down. But on a mobile device, you just get killed. So the operating system was like, no, you can't use this much memory. I need it for other things, and it force quits you. The app to the user appears to crash, or it does crash. But it's like a purposeful crash. The iOS says, no, you can't have that much memory. So that's one. It takes a pretty complicated, either a pretty complicated app or a really old phone with a low amount of RAM to run into this issue. But I definitely have, and I've had to change how much I've rendered at once due to it. There's when you're inside Xcode doing a simulator or a live device run of your app in development, there's a UI on the left side that shows you how much memory you're using and how that's changing over time, like a running graph, which is useful. We debugged tab swipe plugins. Okay, so another thing when you're doing Cordova or React Native is you have to think about what plugins are available and what you might have to write yourself in Java and Swift, and like how good the existing plugins are and how like battle tested or debugged they are. So the plugins that I used with Parlay, most of them work great. Like geolocation works pretty good. The camera, there was maybe a small bug that I don't think I observe anymore. But there were some that were a little bit buggy. I remember there was social sharing, like when you do a share icon and you do it to Facebook or Twitter. The Facebook one had an error in it, and then at least for Meteor OAuth packages, the native app switching version of Facebook login. I've tried maybe 3 different Cordova Atmosphere packages, or I guess Atmosphere wrappers or Cordova packages that all have had various bugs, and it's the kind of thing where like I'm not exactly sure what's going on when you're doing OAuth app switching in native, and I think one time I tried to delve into it and look at the code and modify it and rerun it, but I was not successful in fixing the bug I was trying to fix. So I guess depending on what kind of native functionality you need your app to have, you might run into these problems. And I'm not sure what the React Native plugin ecosystem is like. I think they might do some more plugins themselves, like in-house, and those would probably have a higher quality bar. But there's definitely a smaller batch of or ecosystem of community plugins, just because it hasn't been around as long. But you can do similar things, and in the extreme case, you can always just make your own, and it's going to be similar in both cases. You're just going to have to write some native code for both, or all of the platforms that you want to support. So in summary, there are definitely some things you have to think about when you are trying to replicate a native look and feel. You can make animations performant even on mobile with restricted resources. The main thing I would say is that if you are getting into complex templates, client templates with a whole lot of content and functions that are like the equivalent of Blaze templates, or functions that are preparing your data for display, then you might have to do some trade-offs, and you might have some pauses like you see in my app with the infinite scroll. And there's room to be improved in my app, but done a lot already. So you have to think about the trade-off of how complicated your app is going to be, and how much time you want to spend doing performance analysis with like a Chrome DevTools timeline, versus how much time. Well, I guess in the past the alternative was write it twice in Swift and Java, but now the alternative is React Native, which is fantastic, to be able to write once and run them both, and have a native UI, and for your JavaScript to sort of be running in a separate thread, so not blocking the UI. That's huge. And so for certainly if you're not familiar with either web dev or React Native, and you're choosing one to learn, I would suggest React Native. And certainly if you're making a social app that has complicated interactions, or interaction design and animations, you're going to want to do that in React Native. But in particular, if you already have a website, or you're more familiar with web dev, if you have a web app, and you can reuse some of those views in your or some of just the logic and not the view layer in your Cordova app, and it's not like a really complicated app, then it might be easier for you to just use Cordova and make a website and put it inside of a native shell and have that for both platforms. These are just some of the things to think about when you're making that decision of Cordova versus React Native. And I think that's everything I have for you. I'm happy to take questions about the app, or about
and now, brief word from our sponsors before you see the rest of the talk. Raygun. Spend more time building great software and less time fighting it. Raygun helps keep a watchful eye on your web and mobile applications and tells you when problems arise. You can learn more at raygun.com. NativeScript, backed by Telerik by Progress, is an open source framework for building truly native mobile apps with TypeScript and Angular 2. Use your web skills to get native UI and performance on iOS and Android. Enjoy the rest of the talk. Awesome. Well, thank you, Loren. That was a informative talk. I learned a lot, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there were a couple questions here. One I asked is, if you're starting over with Parlay today, would you use something like React Native or NativeScript instead of Cordova?
Not NativeScript. I would definitely go with React Native. NativeScript is cool, but just like look at the number of stars and the community size, and like Facebook's track record with just React or with GraphQL. I definitely think that React Native is going to be the winner here. And yeah, if I was doing Parlay today, I would definitely use React Native. For a lot of client apps, I do freelancing. For a lot of them, I would just do Cordova, because they're like, if it's a CRUD app, if it's like a marketplace, it's like an admin UI. It's just simple and faster to do it in web, particularly if they also want a website. And it's a dev by dev basis. Like whatever you can build fastest, I can definitely do that faster.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like there's some amount of business value you have to think about in there, and like, how are you going to be able to deliver that in the fastest way possible, but without creating, I guess, too much technical debt, I suppose would be the right answer. And like, I don't know if I would necessarily discount NativeScript. I would just say, if Angular is your jam, you should probably give it a look. If React is your jam, then you should probably look at React Native.
I don't know, unless you can use Bonnie's thing. That was really cool from yesterday, her talk, where she mentioned that you can do Angular to React Native sort of together.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that too. I wonder what that's like. Wonder if that's terrible or good, or I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it was coming from the Angular 2 people, like from their team. So
is it?
My suspicion would be that it would be pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Next question is kind of along the same lines. I think you hit on a little bit at the end of the talk there. It seems that, and this is from Davidas. I probably butchered that. I'm sorry. He says, it seems Cordova performance is a big issue. How much development time do you spend on performance optimizations required to have adequate performance?
Just I don't know. It certainly feels like a lot because it's a huge app. I've been working on it for 2 years, mostly full time, and in addition to that, it also has a lot of custom animations, and it's using Blaze. So like if you're using React, you would have definitely had fewer problems than I did. If you weren't using custom animations like I was, you would also be spending fewer time. Like I was using particular things in Ionic, but not the Ionic frame. So like if you notice when I was going to the new page and back, you can't swipe back. That's something comes by default with Ionic, but not something that I've coded yet. And my thing isn't in like a Ionic shell. And my drawers, so like the menus on the right, and there's also one on the left of the menu, and the right there's also the drawer, and also the swiping between the different feeds. That was all custom, like Hammer.js and CSS. If I were doing it again, I would just use Ionic 2 with like a bottom tab bar, and yeah, with no swiping. And if I was doing swiping, I would use Ionic's normal menu thing. That would have been easier, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Loren, for the talk. Really appreciate it. It's time for our next talk. So
you're welcome.
Thank you. And if anyone's interested, where can they find Parlay?
Parlay is at parlaywith.me, or just search Parlay, Parlay, on either app store. And then my site is lorensr.me. If you have any thing you need to do and want to hire someone for, I'm available.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks, Loren. Thanks for watching this CreatorConf talk from the Mobile Edition 2016. For more information about upcoming conferences such as the one in February 2017, go to conf.crater.io to learn more.